On May 26, 1971, Nixon again vented his frustrations, this time in a memo to Secretary of State Rogers. I think as a result of the enormous influence of the Jewish lobby in the United States, not only through its financial contributions to congressmen and senators, but even more because of its enormous influence through the media, we have often subordinated U.S. security interests to the interests of Israel. Nixon continues to speak very frankly about his views on the Middle East conflict. Similar to the Eisenhower administration's 1953 National Intelligence Estimate, which I discussed in my last video, this document also contains statements that would be unimaginable for a president or any American politician to make today. There was one glaring exception for which we have to take responsibility in the Eisenhower administration. In 1956, just before the election, we took a position against the Israelis, British, and French, which brought an end to the comic opera war. Except for the 1956 incident, however, United States policy has gone overboard in support of the State of Israel against their neighbors. Some of those decisions perhaps have been justified on humanitarian grounds. After all, the Jews were horribly persecuted during World War II, and it was the responsibility of all decent people to go an extra mile to rectify that blot on the conscience of mankind. But speaking in humanitarian terms, we have almost totally closed our eyes to the terrible condition of Arab refugees. When I was on a brief African trip in 1957, I stepped into this problem without knowing what a sensitive nerve I would be hitting. I did not visit Israel or Egypt on that occasion, but I reported when I returned that leaders in Morocco and Tunisia, the most pro-Western of the Arab countries, had expressed concern about the plight of the refugees. The whole Jewish community in this country jumped down my throat and probably have never forgiven me for mentioning the issue. The stakes for this nation's peace in the future are too great for us to make decisions abroad based on the political power of a small but very powerful and influential minority at home. It is essential that no more aid programs for Israel be approved until they agree to some kind of interim action on Suez or some other issue. The Israeli leaders must bite the bullet as to whether they want more U.S. aid at the price of being reasonable on an interim agreement or whether they want to go it alone. Nixon makes a prophetic prediction. I am convinced that unless we get some kind of settlement now with the Israelis on the Suez or some other issue, even though the Israelis don't think this can happen, another Mideast war will be inevitable. Now, it's important that we consider a few things about some of the language that Nixon used. An apt description of the unsuitability of the term Jewish lobby is provided in detail by Walter Hickson. The Israel lobby is not comprised exclusively of people of the Jewish faith, nor does it speak for all Jews, nor all Protestant evangelicals, nor even all Zionists. The term Jewish lobby, which has been applied in the past, is an incorrect and inappropriate term, as some American Jews, in fact more with each passing day, do not support Israel's aggressive course in the Middle East. While the lobby does depend heavily on a relatively small number of mostly right-wing and Orthodox Jewish donors, a growing number of Jews and Jewish organizations actively oppose Israeli repression of Palestinians and advocate a just peace in the Middle East. Moreover, linking the lobby with Jews alone obscures the growing number of Christians, notably evangelical Christians, who embrace Israel and the lobby. While they do relatively little direct lobbying as compared with AIPAC and other Jewish groups such as the Anti-Defamation League and the American Jewish Committee, Christian Zionists nonetheless mobilize significant and typically uncritical public support for Israel. Mersheimer and Walt as well took issue with the term. The Israel lobby is not synonymous with American Jewry, and Jewish lobby is not an appropriate term for describing the various individuals and groups that work to foster U.S. support for Israel. The conflation is not helped by the use of the term in the past by Israeli officials and the Israeli press. Mersheimer and Walt quote a former spokesman for the Israeli consulate in New York, who said journalists, editors, and politicians are going to think twice about criticizing Israel if they know they are going to get thousands of angry calls in a matter of hours. The Jewish lobby is good at orchestrating pressure. Mersheimer and Walt additionally cited a November 2006 report from the Israeli Haaretz that used the misnomer. In another conversation in May of 1973, however, Nixon uses the more accurate terminology, saying, "In the Middle East is the problem of Israel. Israel's lobby is so strong that Congress is not reasonable. We have to have policies which don't allow an obsession with one state to destroy our status in the Middle East."